The Shield implodes with one chair shot. At the height of their dominance, the Shield wasn't just a faction, they were a movement. Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins walked through the crowd and wrecked everything in sight. Fans love their unity, their no-nonsense mission, and the fact that they made six-man tags must-see. So when Seth Rollins committed the ultimate wrestling sin and cracked a chair across Roman's back, the crowd wasn't just shocked, they were gutted. It wasn't just a breakup, it was a betrayal of trust. Rollins went from the architect to the sellout overnight, aligning with the authority like the class president joining the school bullies. Reigns and Ambrose were left in disbelief, and fans were left to mourn what had been wrestling's coolest stable in years. Even WWE knew they had something because they teased multiple mini reunions afterward, each one like dangling closure on a string. The Shield's implosion hurt because it felt real, like watching a brother turn on his family for a shiny suit and a better locker. Hardy Boys' feud ends in tears. What hurts more than watching your favorite high-flying daredevil brothers turn on each other, watching it happen more than once? The Hardy Boys were peak late 90s tag team greatness, ladders, tables, swanton bombs off rooftops, and enough hot topic energy to power them all. So when Matt turned on Jeff the first time, it was shocking. When it kept happening in multiple timelines, brands and dimensions, even in TNA, it became an emotional endurance test. The most infamous split came in 2009 when Matt cost Jeff the WWE Championship, then tried to set him on fire. As you do, the feud that followed was weird. Matt went dark, Jeff went weirder, and their matches felt more like family therapy than wrestling. Fans didn't want the Hardys fighting. They wanted the Hardys leaping off absurd structures together. Instead, we got pyro, betrayal, and a feud that ended not with a bang, but with a sigh. The Mega Powers explode over Elizabeth. The Mega Powers had it all: muscle, charisma, headbands, and one Miss Elizabeth. Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage teaming up was a fever dream come true for fans in the late 80s. But their inevitable explosion was Shakespearean, or at least daytime soap Shakespearean. Savage, the jealous champion, started side-eyeing Hogan's increasingly creepy affection for Liz. Hogan, ever the hero in his own mind, denied anything was amiss. The tension built for months, culminating in that legendary backstage segment where Savage absolutely lost it and beat Hogan down. Fans were heartbroken. These weren't just two superstars. They were the two biggest stars in wrestling, and we had to pick a side. Hogan, predictably, got the spotlight. Savage got the paranoia angle. And Elizabeth? She got to stand ringside looking perpetually stressed. It was wrestling melodrama at its finest. The Mega Powers exploded, but the fallout kept fans talking for years. DIY breakup, devastates, NXT crowd. Sometimes a tag team breakup is so brutal, so precisely timed, it turns a good match into a moment burned into fan memory. That was DIY. Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa were NXT's heart and soul, the scrappy underdogs who could take on anyone. Their matches with the Revival and AOP were tag team clinics, but after losing to the Authors of Pain in 2017, Ciampa snapped. As the logo flashed on screen and fans prepared to clap for a good effort, Ciampa hurled Gargano into the entrance screen. The betrayal was surgical. The heartbreak, immediate, and the crowd didn't just boo, they deflated. DIY had gone from beloved team to classic feud in seconds. What followed was one of NXT's most personal rivalries ever, loaded with callbacks, hospital visits, and matches that felt like revenge fantasies. DIY's breakup was a masterclass in storytelling. Fans still whisper that betrayal like it was a crime scene. The Rockers split in Barberhop. Ah yes, the plate glass window heard round the world. The Rockers were fun, flashy, and full of mullets. Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty flipped, strutted, and rode the neon wave of the early 90s. But as we all learned, one was destined for greatness, and the other for meme status. The breakup happened during a tag team therapy session hosted by Brutus Beefcake, because of course it did. Everything seemed patched up until Shawn Michaels kicked Jannetty's head off, smiled, and threw him through the window like an unwanted smoothie. Fans were stunned, not because of the violence, this was wrestling, but because it was so cold, so final, so shiny. Michaels instantly became the Heartbreak Kid and Jannetty became a cautionary tale. Anytime a tag team shows tension today, fans don't ask if someone's going to betray the other. They ask, who's the Jannetty? That's the legacy of this betrayal. The Barberhop never recovered either. The New Day breaks hearts, not bonds. When Big E was drafted to SmackDown in 2020, fans didn't cry foul because of betrayal. They cried because there was no betrayal. That's how loved the New Day was. After years of pancakes, positivity and tag team brilliance, the group didn't break up in a blaze of heel turns or emotional chair shots. No, WWE just quietly separated them in the draft like they were moving furniture. Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston stayed on Raw. Big E went solo on SmackDown. And yet, and this is important, they still referred to themselves as New Day. They never turned on each other, never threw shade, just hugged it out and kept supporting each other like emotionally well-adjusted unicorns. The heartbreak came from how normal it all felt, like your best friend moving to another city. Fans wanted more New Day, and WWE gave us geography instead. It broke hearts because it was kind, and because we knew we'd never get another group like them. Sasha Banks betrays Bayley brutally. WWE teased it for years. Best friends, worst enemies, hugs, backstabs, awkward counseling sessions. Sasha Banks and Bayley's entire friendship was basically a ticking time bomb wrapped in glitter. But when the betrayal finally came in 2020, it was as brutal as it was overdue. After holding all the gold as the golden role models, Bayley decided Sasha was no longer useful and slammed her into a chair with enough spite to power a WrestleMania pyro budget. Fans had waited so long for the moment, and it delivered. The feud that followed was intense, emotional, and proved once again that Sasha Banks might actually be better when she's in pain. It was one of the rare times WWE let a long-term story breathe, and the result was a women's rivalry that actually felt personal. Bayley broke the hugger, Sasha broke through, and fans got the drama they'd been waiting for since the NXT days. No counseling sessions required. Kevin Owens turns on Sami Zayn. Kevin Owens turning on Sami Zayn is less of an if and more of a seasonal tradition. Friends, enemies, friends again, enemies again. Keizo and Sami have the kind of toxic wrestling relationship that makes you want to check your own friendships for chair shot potential. But their most painful split came after their NXT bromance was shattered by KO powerbombing Zayn onto the ring apron. It wasn't just a heel turn, it was a business decision. Zayn had just won the NXT title. Owens smiled, celebrated, then wrecked him with all the warmth of a tax audit. It was savage. It was sudden. It was also peak Kevin Owens. Every time they reconnect, fans get hopeful. Every time KO betrays him, fans feel like they should have known better, but they never stop caring. Because deep down, everyone wants to believe that maybe, this time, the powerbomb won't come. It always does. Batista destroys Evolution. With thumbs down, it only took one thumbs down to launch 1,000 memes. Batista, the silent powerhouse of Evolution, had just won the 2005 Royal Rumble. Triple H, Ric Flair, and the booking gods wanted him to challenge for the SmackDown title, but Batista smelled the setup, played dumb, and then gave Triple H the most iconic thumbs down in wrestling history before powerbombing him through a table. Evolution was dead. Triple H looked like he'd just been betrayed by his own reflection, and Batista, he became a star overnight. Fans loved it, because finally someone didn't fall for the authorities' nonsense. Batista became the face of no thanks, I'll wreck you instead. And while the breakup ended a dominant faction, it birthed a single star who walked alone, with skinny jeans and far pyro. The Usos split during Bloodline Civil War. You know it's bad when a tag team breakup feels like the end of a family. The Usos weren't just brothers, they were the Bloodline's backbone. Years of dominance, record-breaking reigns, and synchronized super kicks made them one of WWE's all-time great teams. But when Roman Reigns went full dictator, the cracks started forming. First Jay, then Jimmy, questioned the head of the table. The tension simmered for months until Jimmy finally snapped, super kicked Roman, and walked out. Jay followed soon after, setting up a split that felt less like a heel turn and more like Thanksgiving dinner gone wrong. Fans were heartbroken, because this wasn't just a team breaking up, it was family imploding in slow motion. The Bloodline Civil War wasn't about titles, it was about identity and loyalty, and how even the tightest bonds can unravel when manipulated long enough. Plus, nothing says emotional damage like a super kick to your cousin. Enzo Amore betrays Big Cass coldly. Enzo Amore and Big Cass were like the buddy cop duo of WWE. One did the talking, the other did the walking, and both made a lot of noise. They climbed the ranks of NXT and WWE's main roster armed with charisma, catchphrases, and absurd levels of volume. But just when they seemed poised for tag team gold. Big Cass turned heel with a surprise backstage attack. Fans didn't want to believe it. Enzo didn't want to believe it, and even Cass didn't quite sell it right. The storyline tried to paint Enzo as the leech and Cass as the real breakout star. Problem was, the fans didn't buy it. Cass's singles run stalled, Enzo's mic skills couldn't carry solo matches, and both careers quietly collapsed. The betrayal didn't feel like a shocking twist. It felt like someone decided to break up a band before they even recorded an album. WWE tried to force a main event push from a mid-card act. The result? Dead silence and a reminder. Not every heel turn is a golden ticket. M&M implodes with mirror shot betrayal. M&M had everything a modern heel tag team needed. Fashion, flair, pyro, paparazzi, and Melina's ridiculous entrance split. Joey Mercury and Johnny Nitro ooze sleaze in the best way possible, holding down the SmackDown tag division in the mid-2000s. But then came the slow unraveling, jealousy, miscommunication, and a mirror to the face. Joey Mercury took a literal and metaphorical hit when Nitro and Melina turned on him. The storyline Breakup saw Melina slap Mercury and Nitro smash him with their signature mirror prop. Because apparently this fashion-forward duo didn't believe in conflict resolution through conversation. The breakup was dramatic, but it led to wildly different fates. Nitro got repackaged into John Morrison, eventually finding success. Mercury, meanwhile, became more well-known for his behind-the-scenes work than his post-M&M in-ring career. The betrayal was flashy, but it felt more like a way to fast-track Nitro's solo push than a satisfying climax. A glam rock implosion that ultimately reminded fans style over substance only gets you so far. Rated RKO ends. In RKOs Out of Nowhere, when Edge and Randy Orton formed Rated RKO, fans got a union of two of WWE's most unapologetic egos. They were snarky, vicious, and unified by a shared hatred of DX. It was beautiful chaos, and for a brief moment they actually felt like a dominant force that could break the system. But in typical WWE fashion, tag team stability is a myth. The team split gradually as both men's ambitions grew too large to share the spotlight. Orton hit an RKO on Edge during a match, and that was that. No teary goodbye, no heartfelt promo, just a trademark heel doing heel things to another heel. And suddenly, the team was dead. Fans weren't so much heartbroken as they were disappointed. Rated RKO was too good to end without fanfare. They deserved fireworks, a betrayal in a ladder match, maybe a flaming spear through a table. Instead, we got an RKO and radio silence. A breakup as cold as their alliance was hot. Legacy falls apart at WrestleMania 26. Legacy, Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes, and Ted DiBiase Jr. was supposed to be the future of WWE. They had pedigree, presentation, and Orton constantly reminding everyone that he was better than his backup dancers. The tension within the group built slowly, bubbling under the surface with subtle glances and accidental betrayals. But the group didn't explode. It fizzled. Their triple threat match at WrestleMania 26 wasn't a climax, it was a reset button. Orton won, Rhodes and DiBiase floundered, and fans were left wondering why WWE gave up just when things got interesting. The breakup lacked the stakes, drama, and weight of a great implosion. Cody and Ted never fully recovered from the split, at least not in WWE. Orton moved on, as he always does. Legacy could have been WWE's answer to Evolution 2.0, but instead it felt like a footnote. The crowd wasn't devastated, they were confused. Turns out not all breakups need betrayal. Some just need a company to care enough to tell the story properly. Nikki Bella betrays Brie shockingly. You can't spell betrayal without Bella, at least not in 2014. After years of twin magic, the Bella twins finally fell apart during the lead up to SummerSlam. Nikki turned on Brie with a slap heard around the Total Divas universe, launching one of the most overdramatic and memeable feuds in recent memory. I Wish You Died in the Womb became an instantly infamous promo line, turning their sisterly spat into a full-blown soap opera. WWE tried to manufacture family drama that could rival the Kardashians, but the fans weren't buying it. Instead of heartbreak, it earned eye rolls. The emotional investment WWE hoped for got smothered in melodrama. Nikki's heel turn did give her a solo spotlight and a long Divas championship reign, but the feud with Brie fizzled fast. It was hard to feel the betrayal when both sisters were smiling for red carpet photos the same week. The angle had potential, but the execution was too over the top to land. Lesson learned. Realism still matters, even in a world where people wrestle in neon tutus. A PA closes doors, never reopened. The Acolyte Protection Agency, Bradshaw and Farouk, were WWE's baddest barroom brawlers. They didn't turn on each other. They didn't explode in some teary betrayal. They just stopped teaming one day. No brawl, no steel chair to the back, not even a single beer thrown in anger. One week they were pounding beers and skulls, and the next Bradshaw was handing out financial advice on Wall Street. Fans didn't get closure, they got JBL. And while JBL's heel run had its moments, the transformation was so jarring that it felt like someone flipped the channel mid-story. Ron Simmons quietly disappeared from the spotlight, only to pop up occasionally yelling, "Damn!" A perfect summation of how abrupt the APA breakup felt. This wasn't so much a breakup as it was a ghosting, and it hurt, because APA was the kind of team that didn't need titles. They just needed a poker table and a six-pack. Instead, fans got an empty table and one of the most hated main event gimmicks of the Ruthless Aggression era. Talk about emotional whiplash. The bar splits quietly, sadly forgotten. Cesaro and Sheamus forming the bar was one of WWE's rare enemies become allies stories that actually worked. After a brutal best-of-7 series, they ended up as reluctant partners, and shockingly, they clicked. Matching kilts, synchronized poses, and blunt force wrestling. It worked and fans loved it, but their breakup, it just happened. No betrayal, no farewell match. One day they were a team, the next Cesaro was drafted elsewhere and Sheamus was off filming something. WWE quietly dissolved one of its most effective modern teams, like they were cleaning up a catering table. The lack of closure made it worse. The bar had real chemistry and a name that didn't sound like a tech startup. They deserved something, anything, to mark the end. A handshake, a chair shot, a bit of promo about who carried the team. Instead, they vanished like a push Cesaro once had. And that's the tragedy. A great team with no finale, just silence, and maybe a stiff uppercut in the wind. Alpha Academy teases split weekly now. Chad Gable and Otis have become the kind of tag team that gets fans invested without ever needing gold. They're funny, effective, and somehow turned shoosh into a war cry, but if you've been watching lately, you've probably noticed the slow tension, the glares, the missed tags, classic signs of WWE's favourite trick, the slow motion tag team breakup. The worst part? It hasn't even happened yet. WWE's been teasing it for over a year. Will Otis return to maximum male models? Will Gable snap and German suplex Otis into orbit? No one knows. Not even WWE. This is the kind of breakup that hurts while it's still happening. Every week, fans hold their breath for a betrayal that hasn't arrived. It's like watching a couple argue for months and never actually split. Just awkward tension and emotional exhaustion. And maybe that's the plan, to make us beg for it to be over. Which, ironically, is what most WWE fans say around hour 3 of Raw. Heavy Machinery ends with silence, confusion. Heavy Machinery was goofy fun. Otis was the lovable ham and egger, and Tucker was also there. Together they were big, loud, and weirdly entertaining, kind of like the tag team equivalent of a food truck. Fans didn't need them to win titles, they just needed them to dance and lift stuff. Then came the Money in the Bank briefcase. Otis shockingly won it, setting up a bizarre solo run, a romance storyline with Mandy Rose and Tucker. Suddenly heel turning out of nowhere. At Hell in a Cell 2020, he hit Otis with the briefcase in a move so random that the crowd reaction was mostly confusion. Then he cut a bitter promo backstage and was never really seen again. The betrayal didn't land. It wasn't built up. It was just WWE hitting the panic button and throwing Tucker into irrelevance. Otis eventually joined another faction and Tucker faded into the ether. It was like someone told a joke halfway through and then left the room. No punchline, no closure, just two big dudes forgotten. Crime Time ends without real explanation. Crime Time was one of WWE's most unique tag teams, part comedy, part chaos, and somehow always over with the crowd. JTG and Shad Gaspar oozed charisma, and while the gimmick was definitely a product of its time and its stereotypes, fans genuinely loved them. They had catchphrases, confidence, and undeniable chemistry. Then one day, it ended. There was no betrayal, no big emotional segment. Crime Time just sort of stopped being Crime Time. Shad briefly turned heel, attacked JTG, and then poof, they were gone. The abrupt end left fans stunned and frustrated. The team had never even won the tag titles despite years of popularity. Their breakup felt like a waste, like WWE gave up on them without ever really committing to them. In hindsight, it was a classic case of, we don't know what to do with you, so we'll do nothing at all. Fans still chant for them when JTG appears at indie shows, because unlike their WWE run, the love never really ended. WWE just forgot to book the goodbye. Los Guerreros split over lie, cheat, steal. Eddie and Chavo Guerrero were the ultimate family-first tag team, until they weren't. Their gimmick was built around the mantra lie, cheat, and steal. But when they turned on each other, it felt less like a philosophy and more like a self-fulfilling prophecy. What started as a comedic but talented duo slowly turned sour, with Chavo getting jealous of Eddie's singles success. The turn wasn't sudden, it was a slow burn, full of side-eyes, mid-match disagreements, and eventually Chavo losing it and beating Eddie with a chair. Fans were stunned. Not just because of the betrayal, but because it felt like watching Thanksgiving dinner go nuclear. The story was emotional, especially because it was rooted in real-life family dynamics, but the aftermath didn't quite click. Chavo never truly recovered in WWE, and Eddie was pulled into other storylines. The Guerrero breakup was memorable, but mostly because of what could have been. They were one of the rare teams that could have lasted longer without losing steam. And instead, we got trauma disguised as storytelling. The Iconics break up for nothing. The Iconics were loud, annoying, and absolutely brilliant. Billy Kay and Peyton Royce took a paper-thin gimmick and turned it into one of WWE's most entertaining acts. Whether it was backstage interviews, in-ring shrieking, or synchronized posing, they had fans laughing with them, and occasionally at them too. So naturally, WWE split them up, not with a major betrayal or a blood feud, just a random loser must disband match in 2020. Peyton got a half-hearted singles push, Billy started handing out resumes as a comedy act, and fans everywhere collectively went, wait, what was the point of that? There wasn't one. The breakup felt like someone at the writing table just got bored. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't necessary, and it definitely wasn't beneficial. Instead of elevating two rising stars, it sent both flailing into creative limbo until their eventual releases. The Iconics deserved a proper send-off, or at least one last backstage segment screaming, "We're iconic," into the void. But no, just quiet disappointment, with a very thick Australian accent. The Bludgeon Brothers split prematurely. Once known as Luke Harper and Eric Rowan of the Wyatt family, these two big men got a rebrand as the Bludgeon Brothers. Giant mallets, post-apocalyptic gear, and the subtlety of a sledgehammer to the face. Despite the ridiculous aesthetic, it kind of worked. They demolished teams and held the SmackDown tag titles like monsters straight out of Mad Max, Deep South edition. But then, silence. Injuries derailed their push, and without warning, the team disappeared. No betrayal, no climactic match, just two large bearded men quietly written off television. When they returned, it was separately, and the Bludgeon Brothers were never mentioned again. Fans didn't get closure, they got corporate amnesia. Worse still, both men clearly had more in the tank, especially Brody Lee, who would go on to prove it in AEW before his tragic passing. WWE had something unique with this team, even if it was drenched in plastic shoulder armor, but instead of doubling down, they quietly buried the hammers and moved on. No swing, no smash, just wasted potential. Team Hell, no ends with fire. Team Hell No was never meant to work, and that's exactly why it did. Daniel Bryan was the straight man. Kane was a demon with anger issues who once tried to kidnap people with a voice modulator, but together they were comedy gold. Hugged out therapy sessions, passive-aggressive tag-ins, and just enough in-ring dominance to win tag titles. But like all good comedy acts, the clock was ticking. The team began to fray once Bryan's rise to singles superstardom took center stage. Their final run in 2018 gave fans a nostalgic boost, but it was clear the end was near. The team disbanded without a violent betrayal, but with one final fiery farewell. Kane being written off by a backstage attack, and Bryan going full yes mode again. There was no heartbreak because, frankly, everyone saw it coming. Still, it was bittersweet. Team Hell, Noah's lightning in a bottle, two misfits who turned dysfunction into brilliance. Their split didn't hurt like others, but it did signal the end of WWE's weirdest and somehow most effective buddy comedy, the Street Profits' future looks unstable. For years, the Street Profits have been one of WWE's most energetic, charismatic tag teams. Montez Ford has the kind of vertical leap that makes gravity nervous, and Angelo Dawkins has quietly become one of WWE's most reliable big men. Together, they've held gold, made Red Solo Cups iconic, and managed to make even terrible backstage skits tolerable. But here's the problem. WWE sees Montez as a future singles star, and that means the clock is ticking on Dawkins. Every time Montez gets a solo match or a spotlight promo, fans collectively brace for the betrayal angle. As of now, it hasn't happened, but it will. You can feel it. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And when it does, it's going to hurt. Not just because they're fan favourites, but because it'll mark the end of one of the few modern teams that still feels fresh. Here's hoping WWE takes the slow road instead of pulling the trigger mid-Raw for shock value. But history isn't kind to tag teams with momentum. American Alpha breaks without any payoff. American Alpha was supposed to be Team Angle 2.0, clean-cut mat wrestling prodigies who suplexed their way into fans' hearts. Chad Gable and Jason Jordan had instant chemistry, crisp teamwork, and the kind of athleticism that made commentators use the phrase amateur background every 30 seconds. They even held tag team gold and looked primed to dominate a division desperately in need of actual wrestling. And then they didn't. WWE broke them up with a plot twist so jarring it felt AI generated. Jason Jordan was revealed as Kurt Angle's illegitimate son. Instead of a feud, Gable just disappeared. No betrayal, no big match, not even a dramatic backstage shove. The team simply dissolved, sacrificed to a storyline that never took off, and ended with Jordan's injury. Fans weren't angry so much as confused. One moment, we had the next great tag team. The next, we had Chad Gable playing Shorty G and Jason Jordan lost in paternity purgatory. This breakup didn't break hearts. It just broke logic. The Dudley Boys' betrayal hurt hardcore fans. The Dudley Boys weren't just a tag team, they were a legacy. Bubba Ray and Devon were the masters of tables, the inventors of 3D, and the reason every 2000s crowd had someone yelling, "Devon, get the tables," even in public. For years, they were inseparable, but WWE, in its infinite wisdom, couldn't help but test the limits of brotherly love. In the early 2000s, the team was split in the draft. Devon became a heel preacher on SmackDown, yes, really, while Bubba stayed on Raw. They briefly feuded, but it didn't land. It wasn't until a later reunion run when WWE tried again, teasing tension before Bubba finally turned heel as Bully Ray, except not really, because WWE never fully committed. The fans hated seeing them at odds. It felt unnatural, like watching peanut butter argue with jelly. They were better together, always. Some teams aren't meant to split. The Dudleys were one of them. Breaking them up didn't create a new star. It just robbed the fans of the chaos they loved. No tables, just sadness. Rusev Day ends too early, sadly. Rusev Day started as a joke and then became a movement. What began as a throwaway gimmick between Rusev and Aiden English somehow caught fire with fans. Every day was Rusev Day. The shirt sold out. The chants echoed through arenas. And for a brief moment, WWE stumbled into something accidentally perfect. Naturally, they couldn't let that stand. Instead of riding the momentum, WWE booked a betrayal angle where Aiden English turned on Rusev in a melodramatic, he was jealous all along swerve. The heel turn didn't land, the feud went nowhere, and the act disbanded just as it was getting white hot. Worse, neither man came out stronger. Rusev was directionless, English faded away, and Rusev Day quietly disappeared. It felt like WWE was punishing the act for getting over on its own. The fans were devastated, not because the breakup was tragic, but because it was so preventable. They didn't just kill a tag team, they killed a holiday. Somewhere a calendar still weeps. Edge and Christian's split felt personal. Edge and Christian were the kings of the ladder match, the connoisseurs of steel chairs, and the pioneers of the 5-second pose. They were childhood best friends turned tag team royalty, equal parts comedy and carnage. So when they split, it hit different. The breakup came during the Invasion era, with Christian turning on Edge out of jealousy after Edge won the King of the Ring. The turn was sudden, but not unexpected. Christian had been simmering with resentment, and WWE finally pulled the trigger. The result? A con chair 2 to the soul of the Attitude Era. Fans were crushed. This wasn't a thrown-together team breaking up. This was history fracturing. The feud itself was solid, but it lacked the long-term payoff. Edge eventually became a main eventer. Christian's push was stop-start at best. The emotional impact was there. Watching best friends explode always stings, but the execution never fully met the potential. They gave us TLC history, iconic promos, and some of the best timing in the business. Their split felt like a divorce where both parents still show up to Christmas dinner, but no one talks about that year. If you enjoyed this, hit the subscribe button because there's more coming your way.